Roxie.
Hello! Oh my god, I'm so happy people are here.
They've been queuing out the door.
Well, there's always a fear, especially coming on after like an icon like Andrew Huberman. You're like, fuck.
Actually, that fear, Roxie, though, I do want to talk about that because as someone who is at this hugely successful point in their career, who has created this huge brand, has multiple best-selling books, you still have fear, even though you're talking about manifestation. You've been on this journey of self-worth. You're teaching us about confidence. So tell me the story behind the story. What was the breakthrough and the breaking point?
Oh, okay. I suppose the breaking point and the breakthrough happened at the same time, which was in May 2018. So, my God, that is nearly 8 years. Well, no, it's happened. I had my 8-year anniversary. It was 8 years ago, and what happened was I had been in a battle with addiction to cocaine for a decade. And up until that point, I had really never known what it was like to be happy. I'd been suffering from depression since I was 12, but at the time I didn't know that it was depression because people didn't talk about mental health the way that we do now. And I had, in one of my attempts to give up drinking and drugs, I decided to go on a yoga teacher training course in Koh Samui. And I thought, well, if I go away and I am practicing yoga every day and I'm meditating every day, then I will free myself. And I remember there was a monk that was training with us, and he looked at my palm and he said, "You have a fork on your palm. You are a wise leader here to teach." And I went, "Yeah, I'm here to teach yoga." So that's great. And I got home and I landed in London, and that day a friend of mine called me and said, "I'm going to this sort of art dinner, do you want to come?" And I said, "Yeah, great." And she said, "Meet me at my hotel." And I got to the hotel and it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and she pulls out a bag of cocaine and she goes, "Do you want a line?" And I went, "Yeah, go on then." And then there I was, 24 hours back, and I was exactly where I was before I left. And that, for me, was my rock bottom, because I ended up going on this sort of 48-hour bender. I went home with men I didn't know. I woke up in such a deep sense of shame and a feeling that I hope none of you have experienced, but I'm sure that many of you have, which is that feeling of deep hopelessness, that nothing is ever going to change, and this idea that this was just who I was and how my life was destined to be. And I called a friend of mine, Sophia, who's actually in the audience. And I said, Sophia won't mind me saying, she's very spiritually inclined. And I was like, "Babe, I don't know what to do." And she was like, "Honey, don't worry about it. I just listened to this podcast on manifesting. You should listen." And I was like, I don't know what manifesting is, but fuck it. I'll try anything. And so I listened to this podcast, and that was the breakthrough, because what I heard in that podcast was that manifestation, which in my definition is using the power of your mind to change and create the reality you experience. What I realized that manifestation was all about self-worth. And it's because the big secret of manifestation is that we can only manifest what we subconsciously believe we are worthy of receiving. And so I realized that I was manifesting, but in the wrong direction. I was keeping myself stuck. And I think what that really meant underneath all of that was that I stopped acting like the victim in my life, and I finally took responsibility and decided that if I was going to experience change, if I was going to feel joy, if I was going to find love, I had to stop blaming everyone and everything in my life for the reason I didn't have it yet, and start taking ownership.
When you listened to that podcast and thought, okay, this is it, this is my breakthrough, this is what I'm going to do, was there any other doubt about manifestation as a concept? Like, could this work? What was your journey from there?
I think I really didn't know what manifestation was. I mean, no one really did at that time, not many people. And so I went home and I started Googling it. But I think I was at this point where I thought I might as well try it. Like, what have I got to lose? And, you know, it did make sense to me in the fact that, yeah, our minds are unbelievably powerful. And actually what I did was, I didn't dive deep just into manifestation specifically. What I actually did is I started listening to all these philosophers. I really brainwashed myself with this self-help kind of sector. And so I was listening to podcasts, I was reading books, I was listening to motivational YouTube speeches. I was doing anything I could. And what I realized was that every single person, every speaker, every thinker, everybody I respected in this field, they were all talking about the power of your mind. And that's what manifestation is. And so from that I thought, well, how can I have any doubt? Because everybody is saying the same thing, that we have infinite power to unlock our potential.
And what does your manifestation practice look like? What is unlocking that potential?
So, I developed my unique 7-step guide to manifesting. And what I realized is that manifesting is not a ritual. And I think that a lot of people have this misconception, and they'll say to me, oh, Roxie, I've been manifesting for 20 minutes every night. I'm like, what does that mean? Because manifestation to me is a way of living, and so it's something that you live and breathe. It's a mindset, it's a way of being and moving through the world. And, for me, day to day, it's step one is, fucking hell, I wasn't expecting to go through the step by step, and please stop me if this gets too long, but step one is to be clear in your vision. It's to really, have an idea in your mind of not just what you want to have, but who you want to become. And I think that is the most important question in manifestation. I think when we think about a practice like this, there's this tendency to think it's about more. What can I have? What can I attract? And that often kind of goes into material things. What can I possess? But actually, manifestation to me is, how can I become the most empowered version of myself that could possibly exist? And in becoming that version of myself, I make things happen. I experience the world differently. And so at the front of my mind always, yes, I do things like vision boards. Yes, I do visualization meditation because I know the neuroscience behind it. But in the top of my mind, I'm always thinking, who do I want to be today? How do I want to show up? Which version of me do I want to step into? And that's something like, before I come on stage today or before I walk into that green room, backstage, there's people like Tara Swart and Andrew Huberman, Davinia Taylor, these people who I am so inspired by. And it would be so easy for me to go in and be like, I've got such imposter syndrome. But actually, I have to think about who is the most empowered version of me, the most empowered version of me of someone who feels really grounded in that space, who feels like, actually, wow, I'm so proud to be in this space. And so I really use this visualization of an embodiment to help me in everything that I do.
You mentioned there that some people might think of manifesting material things, and that isn't necessarily what this should be, what this practice is. So what are some of the misconceptions that you see as manifestation has really entered the mainstream?
I think that there are many, and I think one of the main ones is that, and one of the biggest criticisms manifestation gets is that it's just about visualizing what you want and waiting for it to happen. And there seems to be this kind of idea that it's very mystical and there's this magic to it, and it's, if you just have a positive mindset, if you just think positively enough, then it will happen. And the truth is, I don't believe anybody can think their way to success. I think that you absolutely have to do the work. And by doing the work, I mean doing the internal work to change what you believe about yourself and the world around you. And also the actual work, taking action. I often think that everybody here, you've all got something you want to achieve in your life, maybe a goal you want to reach, something you want to have. And then if I asked all of you to just think about, okay, what are some of the things deep down you need to do to get there? There will be things that you need to do, and you'll think of those things, and you also know that you're not currently doing them. Because right now you're being confined by your fears and doubts. You're living in a way that is aligned with who you are and not who you want to become or who you can be, which means that you're not unlocking your potential. And so, well, what was I saying? Do you know what?
It's all good stuff, but the question was...
Sometimes I go on such autopilot. I'm like, I don't know where I started that sentence and how I got to the end of it.
Follow the train of thought. I think it's fine. We were talking about the misconceptions, and you were.
Well, yeah, there we go. So yeah, you actually have to do that inner work and that outer work to make it happen. So there are things that you are doing. There we go, fucking hell, I got there. There are things that you absolutely know you are not doing now. And so the question and the demand of you is to really say, okay, all these things that you're currently holding yourself back from. How can you step outside of your comfort zone? How can you, fake it until you become it, essentially?
For anyone who is a cynic when it comes to manifestation, or a so-called atheist, I'm not going to ask how you would make them a believer, because I don't think that's what we're about, but what would you say to them?
Read my book, obviously. Look, if you really lay it out, it is so obvious, and I'm going to say something that's going to sound like I'm boasting, and it's not, but 2 million people have read the Manifest books now worldwide, and that isn't because it just has a pretty cover. It's because it really fucking works. And the reason it works is because it's so obvious. I haven't written anything that any of you don't already know, but it's so obvious. If you get clear in your vision, and you start believing you're worthy of receiving it, and you take aligned action, and you overcome challenges and tests from the universe, and you persist through those obstacles, and then you embrace an attitude of gratitude, and you turn envy into inspiration, and then you surrender to the journey. It is so obvious that if you do all those things, you'll change your life. And those are the 7 steps to manifestation. And so I think it's really hard to, if you did one of those things, you would change your life, let alone try doing all 7. And so I think it's, for any cynic, and I never try, like you said, we're not here to convince cynics. I'm like, if you don't want to believe in the power that you possess, then I'm not here to convince you otherwise. But if a part of you is seeking change in your life, then why not give yourself the best possible chance?
I know we've talked about material things, but I'm so curious about the physical. So things like healing and fertility. In a lot of groups that I've been in, particularly meditation, healing groups, I've heard stories from people who say that they've manifested healing, fertility, these things have come to pass. I'm not in a position to question, because that's their experience, but where do you stand on that?
I absolutely believe that it's possible. I don't speak about it in my own work because I don't think it's right to. I say, go to people like Dr. Joe Dispenza for that. He is the OG and he's incredible, and I think, but yeah, you hear so many stories of it that I think it's hard to deny that it's absolutely possible.
Have you ever manifested something that has not come to fruition?
There's definitely been things that I've wanted that haven't happened, of course. I think that, what I often say is that, manifesting is a life practice, and so it's not that you think about what you want and you do this work and then life is just perfect. That's obviously not the case, but you will face rejection, you will face obstacles, but it's the way that you perceive them that changes your whole experience of life. And so, I think about my business, okay, and so I think about, we have this income tracker, and on it we have all the opportunities that come through to us. And in red, you have everything that was a no. They didn't want to meet my fee, they decided I was no longer the right fit for them, whatever it was. Then we have orange, pending, and then we have green. Now, at the end of every year, I always think to myself, oh my God, that was an unbelievable year. There was so much abundance, was flowing. It was incredible, and what a magnificent year. And then I look at this sheet, and I'm always shocked to see that the red is 5 times longer than the orange or the green. And yet, I haven't allowed myself to focus on that. My attention wasn't there. It wasn't narrowed to where the rejection was or to where the no's were, which meant I was always able to show up as my best. I was always able to keep a positive mindset and an open attitude. And that makes me more receptive to abundance. So when you think about things, what did I not manifest? I'm like, well, it's hard to say. What I manifest is a great fucking year. Do I look at the exact details? I'm so sorry, by the way, I swear so much. I really should rein that in. I will, from now, for the rest of the 30 minutes I have. So I think it's like, yes, there are things that don't happen. Yes, there's rejection, but they don't impact me the way that they did. I think that is actually one of the greatest gifts of manifesting, because you'll be able to change the way you view everything that you experience.
When it comes to manifesting, what is science and what is pseudoscience? We can talk about neuroscience, perhaps, versus the laws of attraction.
Yeah, such a good question. So the neuroscience is really strong, and we know things like, we know, for example, that our subconscious accounts for 95% of our brain's activity, and so it is driving our behaviors, our responses, our interpretations, and what we believe about ourselves and the world around us really does become the lens through which we view the world. And so we also know that we have neuroplasticity, which means that we can, through repeated thought and action, change what we believe. And that's a really important thing to understand about neuroscience, so that we can form more empowering beliefs that will shape the way that we behave, shape the way we respond. But also we know things like, when we visualize regularly and we do regular visual rehearsal, we prime our subconscious to basically act like a filtering system. So it will seek out opportunities that are in line with what you are desiring, and it will filter out any unwanted information. And so we can really, with things like visualization, prime our minds to do the work for us. And this is really important because, let's say that, you're trying to, I always say, imagine you're trying to manifest a job opportunity. Okay, if you focus on the exact job title, the exact salary that you want, you might be on LinkedIn and you're looking for a job, and it's so easy to scroll past a million things. But if you know what it is that you want, your brain will actually just seek it out for you. It will do the work. So I think there is that. But then we have the pseudoscience, which is law of attraction. Now, the law of attraction states that like attracts like. And so what we do know, which is a fact, is that from quantum physics, is that everything in the universe is made up of energy. And the only thing that differentiates really one thing from another is the density and vibration of and frequency of the vibration of the atoms. And so you have things that are operating at a high vibrational frequency and things that are operating at a low vibrational frequency. Now, thoughts and feelings have different vibrational frequencies as well. And so when you are operating at a high frequency of joy, gratitude, love, contentment, then by the law of attraction, you will attract that back into your life. And again, this is pseudoscience. We cannot measure this. But if you are operating at a low vibrational frequency, fear, guilt, anger, resentment, then you will attract things that match that frequency. Now, although we cannot prove this with science, anecdotally, I think we all know this to be true. Because it is the days where you wake up in a bad mood, you're pissed off. Those are the days that you forget your phone at home, you miss your train, your Uber cancels on you, you get a bill through the door. I mean, I know for sure, I would say that I'm quite a powerful manifester, and I know how powerful my energy is. When I have PMS, no good things are happening. I always get bills, clients always say no, nothing good happens on those days. It's I may as well just stay home. But on the days where you wake up and you are just so full of gratitude and joy and love, and you're just in a good mood, you're driving to work and all the traffic lights are green. And so I think while it is pseudoscience, for me, it is absolutely true. We know it, we can feel it, and so it does matter.
So much of your work does come back, bless you.
Was that the quietest you've
It was
ever?
a very sweet sneeze.
Yeah, I perfected it.
So much of your work comes back to gratitude, and you're right, that reframing is so powerful. Last night I didn't sleep a wink because my baby's teething, and I was just rocking him, and I'm so tired and I'm so sad for him, and yet I look down and I'm like, how lucky am I to have this little boy? And it shifted everything. It changed, and that was a powerful force that I could then take into the day, even though I'm so tired. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Why is gratitude such a powerful force? What does it actually do for us?
Oh my gosh, there's so much to this. I mean, the first experiment, when I first discovered manifesting, one of the first things I did, I told you I was listening to podcasts, and I remember listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza on the Goop podcast. And he described this experiment where he asked participants to practice gratitude 3 times a day for 4 days in a row. And what he found was that these participants strengthened their immune system by 50%. And when I heard that, I think I was just so moved by it, because I was like, wow, the way that we think is not just impacting how we feel, but the way that our cells are behaving. And that for me was when kind of wisdom met science. And I was like, this is incredible. And then I did more research, and I found, that gratitude has all this incredible impact on sleep, on anxiety, on depression. And then from a a more spiritual point of view, I remember us saying that I'm Iraqi, and my mum used to always say this phrase to me in Arabic, which literally translated as, for every thanks you give, you get 1,000 in return. And it describes this so beautifully that, that great quote, a grateful heart is a magnet for miracles. And I absolutely believe that the more you are grateful for what you have in your life, the more life will give you things to be grateful for. And I think that if people did nothing else, they made no other change, but they introduced a gratitude practice in their life, everything would transform for them. And my favorite gratitude practice is one that I came up with a few years ago, because when I was looking at the way that people would practice gratitude, I often found it was quite similar. They'd do like 3 things that I'm grateful for every morning, or 3 things at night, and they'd often start writing the same thing. And because our brains get desensitized to things, the feeling of gratitude was easily lost. You just write it for the sake of it because you were just doing it. I'm grateful for my health, my family, the roof over my head. And it wasn't starting to have that actual impact. It wasn't retraining your brain in the way that it has the power to. And so instead, I thought, okay, every night before bed, and I call it the positivity journal, I ask all of you, and I'd love everybody to try this from tonight, is I ask everyone to write down in chronological order every single good thing that happened from the minute they woke up to the minute they went to bed. And so you would wake up, I woke up and the sun was shining. I could hear the birds outside my window. My morning coffee tasted delicious. I made it to the gym when I said I would. I got to hug my partner or my child or whatever it was. What you realize is that each and every day is filled with beautiful moments, ordinary moments of joy that otherwise just go completely unnoticed. And the thing is, we as humans are wired for negativity bias, right? We're wired to look for the negatives because that was once something that protected us, but we no longer need that. And so we need to retrain our brains to see the good in our lives. And this practice for me is such a powerful one. I remember when I started doing it for a few weeks, I'd be kind of driving home, the same drive that I take every day, and suddenly I'd notice, like, my God, that building is beautiful. And I became like so annoying with how positive I was, because I'm just like, oh my God, this is incredible. And you know what? I would rather be annoyingly positive, because it is so incredible to be able to feel appreciation. That to me is what a happy life is. I've started doing this disclaimer on manifesting. Manifesting your life won't... Fuck. Rewind, because it's so good. Manifesting your goals won't make you happy. And I think that all of you know that. You have all reached a goal that you were so desperate to, and when you got there, the joy lasted like a fleeting moment, and then you moved on to the next goal. Or you move the goalpost. And I think that there is this, maybe that is one of the biggest misconceptions of manifesting, is that happiness is found at this sort of end point. And the truth is it's not. Happiness truly is found on the journey. And as cliche as it sounds, it's absolutely true. And I think that's why step 7, trust in the universe, is such an important step in this process, because it has to be about this surrender, about this ability to actually, yes, I know what I want, but I'm going to be entirely grateful for the life that I already have now. In fact, that's one of the most magnetic states that you can be in. In this state of having something to move towards. We need that momentum for our mental health, but not emotionally attaching to the outcome. I'm not going to be successful when, I'm not going to be validated when, I'm not going to be enough, happy, or all these things when. I can be those things now, and then when I get there, I can just feel proud of myself. I can feel like, yeah, that's a cool thing to achieve, but actually, I made my life feel really good now, and then you have so much more power.
I'm all for being overwhelmingly positive, but we're a room of very privileged people. We're at a health summit on a Saturday morning for anyone who doesn't have a roof over their head, like you said, or doesn't have a family, someone to hold at the end of the day. They're not necessarily a manifestation cynic or atheist, but they feel they have no reason to believe that that's going to work for them. What would you say?
I think there's a couple of things. I think firstly, there are many things in this life we cannot control. The things that we can, we should. And I think that there's always, no matter where you are, there are always going to be something that you can control, but absolutely with compassion for all the things that you cannot. And for all of us, wherever, even the people sat here today, there are things in your life that have happened that are unexplainably painful, or just feel so unfair, or you just cannot understand. You may be going through grief, you may have had trauma that you should never have had to go through. But you don't have to let that define you. I also think that what is amazing about a practice like manifestation is that, for me, like I said, it's not about things, it's about who you can become. And I think that people who are in a position, as you asked, you know, who feel like they don't have a reason to be, look for people who can inspire you, look for people that can expand you. You know, Oprah is Winfrey is one of the greatest expanders, you know, Tony Robbins. These are people who really did come from nothing, without that privilege, but absolutely created a life for themselves. And I think looking to be inspired by people is always a really powerful practice.
Looking back at what you overcame, where you are today, we know, we've just said, it's not a one and done practice. It's not like, got it, I've made it. So what are the limiting beliefs that you're still trying to overcome? What are you manifesting right now?
I'm manifesting love. Oh my God, okay, I just saw David Guillaume outside. He was talking about love and relationships. I said, David, he said, do you talk like this on stage? I said, yeah. I was dating a 29-year-old, I'm 35, pretty successful woman. I was dating a 29-year-old with no money that lives with his mum in Manchester, and I've been heartbroken for 2 months. What can you say about that? For fuck's sake. You know, we've all got our things that we're still working through. I am working through that.
So there's love. We're talking about well-being today, yes, across this weekend. What is a life well lived to you?
A life well lived. It's a life that is filled with ordinary, mundane moments of joy, love, growth. You know, I think that every day is a gift, and I think I believe that even more so. I think probably since I lost my father a couple of years ago, you just, any time anyone's faced with the kind of fragility of life, you just are so much more grateful for it. I think my son, I think he's like a little philosopher. He just, on the night before his 7th birthday, I said, and what do you love about life? He said, wow, we're so lucky to be human. Some people, they aren't fortunate. They have to be a fish. And I thought, fucking right. If you're ever sad, just remember, you are not a fish.
And that is the second time fish have come up on the main stage today.
Really?
Yeah. Andrew Huberman loves them.
Really?
Yes. So let's make it 2 and 2. We'll see what the next talk holds. I do want to ask Roxie, because you could just do it for yourself, but you wanted to spread the word. You wanted to share this. Why was that?
In my lowest moment, you know, social media wasn't what it is today, and I found it so isolating and so lonely. And I think that whenever we're going through anything, it's so easy to feel like we're the only ones, but really everything we go through is a universal experience. And I think that to be able to relate to somebody's story, to relate to their vulnerability, is the only way that we can feel connected, that we can feel like there's a way out. And for me, you know, I tell all my deepest, darkest secrets. Sometimes I don't know why I do it, but I just hope that someone who's also sad about an arsehole is feeling like it's not just me, you know. And I think there is just, in this online world, and especially with AI, I think the only way we can really connect is through vulnerability. And so I'm just such a champion of it, and I hope that, you know, my purpose here is to be of service. I know that, and so yeah.
Well, on the subject of sharing, I'd love to open the floor to any questions from the audience, and we'll go around with microphones. A hand's just popped up right here. Go for it.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks. So thank you for your talk. I'm really interested in how you would differentiate manifestation from like a real focused hard work as a lifestyle.
Yeah, do you know what? I mean, I think they're very similar. I think, you know, like a kind of alluded to is that for me, my 7 steps of manifesting in particular, which is the practice that I obviously follow, it's just a life practice. It really is just about self-belief, goals, discipline, alignment, overcoming challenges. To me, the only addition to that practicality, I would say, is probably the trust in the universe, which is the ultimate surrender. This, I don't personally, I don't know what I believe in terms of God, but I believe in a greater power. I believe in the power of energy and this universal power. And I do think it has that kind of like final pull. I do believe that things are meant for us. I think that there is a sense of destiny. I think there is a sense of something greater at work, and I think that marrying both of those together to me is what manifestation is.
When we talk about lifestyle, actually, it does really bring us back to well-being, which is what this weekend is all about. What does your well-being routine look like? How does manifestation fit into that amongst whatever else is in there?
Well, I think that optimization or well-being or looking after yourself is a signal to the universe. I believe I am worthy of love and respect, and I believe that we're in constant dialogue with the universe, that we show it what we believe we are worthy of receiving, and it will bring us that. And so every time I honor my body, my mind, I am strengthening that signal. So for me, I take a lot of supplements. I've started my peptide journey. I get fresh air, I get sunlight, I do all the basics, I exercise when I can. I'm very strict on things like supplements. Am I exercising all the time? No, because I find it hard. Do I meditate every day? No, but I meditate whenever I can. I do gratitude practices every day, I do mindset practices every day, but I wouldn't say I'm overly strict on any one thing, but I am absolutely obsessed with wellness, especially in terms of what I put in my body, apart from the Botox.
There's a question here at the front.
Is there anything you do or you recommend to block other energies? I feel like I can ride my high alone a lot, but let's say my husband is Italian. He's a natural negative force when it comes to complaining sometimes. How do I maintain my high without manifesting a second husband?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that, there is that thing, emotional contagion. Like, we do catch the emotions of others. Like, stress is contagious. I learned that from Tara Swart, who's talking tomorrow. For me, it's like reset rituals. So it's like you can't cut out negative people. You can't cut out your husband, but you can give yourself a reset ritual. What is it that maybe when you leave their presence, or when you get in your room, or you get in the bathroom, it's like, I'm going to say my affirmations, I'm going to do a gratitude practice, I'm going to do a 10-minute walk around the block. Anything that you can just to reset yourself so that you can have that kind of internal boundary and that chance to just be like, breathe out negativity, breathe in positivity.
I saw a question over here.
I was wondering, the trust part, the surrender part, I think is the hardest for all people.
Yes.
And that's the same to start believing you are worthy. But I don't think affirmations are enough, like staying in front of the mirror and repeating, I'm worthy of love, I'm worthy. What was for you the breaking point, the breakthrough that made you believe you are worthy?
Yeah. Look, I definitely think the journey to self-worth is ongoing, and the book I wrote after Manifest was Confidence, 8 Steps to Knowing Your Worth, because I was like, it's so hard to describe in a few steps, within that book, yes, mastering your thoughts is part of it, the way that you speak to yourself regularly, and the things that you say often, like affirmations, do become then what you believe, and you can change that through neuroplasticity. But there's so much more to it. It is how you treat yourself day to day. It's I say that sometimes you show someone you love them in your actions, not in your words. If you make your partner a cup of tea every morning, but it's the same for ourselves. You don't have to say to ourselves, I love myself, I love who I am, although great if you can, but perhaps you do it by doing the things you say you will, by committing to yourself, by building self-trust. It's about taking the pressure off to be liked by everyone. It's about, which is my favorite step of that book, it's about being of service to others. We want to feel of value in this world. We want to know that there is a meaning behind why we are here, and I think being of service is actually a really good, incredible way to build self-worth that gets forgotten. It's about being able to celebrate yourself and your everyday qualities and what makes you so wonderfully unique. It's a very active practice, and it's ongoing. I mean, absolutely, there are days when I said to someone yesterday, I was like, I just think I'm so irrelevant now, but what's different is that it's not that doubts and self-doubt goes completely. It's that they become more fleeting and you don't attach to them in the way that you used to. But, it is an ongoing journey, but one that is absolutely worth going on.
It's true, there are so many different ways we can show love to ourselves, and it will be different for every person in this room, the way that you would receive it back from another person. I see a hand here, right near the mic, and then I'll go back here.
Thank you very much for the incredible talk.
Thank you.
If you had the power to change the education system, what would you change in the curriculum or anything else?
Oh my God, great question. I wrote a manifest for kids for 7 to 12-year-olds, and in that I wrote these 4 steps, so I would probably include them. One is helping kids to understand their emotions and really understand and identify them so they can validate them and learn practices to work through them, breath work, affirmations, creating this safe space for children to be able to process their emotions, rather, because emotions get stored and trapped within us. The second is, I think the biggest thing I would put in the curriculum is a gratitude practice. I think that do a lot of people here have kids? I think like the number one thing the best thing for me personally that you could do for a child is to introduce a gratitude practice into their lives. Imagine learning to see the world through a positive mindset. Like, how life-changing would that be? And I think if they had to do imagine if kids had to do gratitude at the end of every school day. Like, imagine how that would change their perception of the world. I think that would be amazing. I think gratitude, that's what I'd do.
We can go back a little. You've had your hand really, really high up.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hey, your book was my Secret Santa gift this Christmas.
I love that.
And the friend who offered it to me is so pissed she's not here today. I came here because of her. I wanted to ask, in these 8 years, you were never tempted to fall back into your addiction? Like maybe in the first 1 or 2 years when this manifestation muscle of yours was not fully developed.
I did. After I was I don't know if I've shared this, but anyway. When I was pregnant with my son, I discovered manifestation, and I met his father 2 weeks later on the 7th of June 2018, and a year to the day our son Wolf was born. And when I got pregnant, when I met Wade, I was still battling with my own addiction, so I was secretly doing cocaine on all our dates, and I was trying to get a grip on it because I just discovered this practice and I wanted to change. But if anyone who has any experience with addiction, you'll know there's a lot of trying and failing. And I ended up having to give everything up very quickly when I was pregnant, like overnight, and it was the hardest period of my life. But when I was pregnant, I was immersing myself in self-development. I knew I needed to change my life, but a part of me, I was still an addict. I just wanted to get this baby out so I could go out and get fucked up. That's the truth. And a few months after I did, I went and had this like massive night out. And I remember just being like, oh, it wasn't that fun. And what I realized, I remember this experiment that had really changed my whole perception of everything, which is that they had done this experiment on rats where they provided it with cocaine, and they had pressed the lever and cocaine would be delivered, and what the rats did is they kept taking the cocaine over and over again until essentially they wasted away. But then they put the same rats in a different cage, and in this cage they had food, they had other rats, they had like wheels. It was like a rat heaven. And and the rats didn't do the same thing. They didn't keep pressing the lever. And that's when I realized that actually perhaps it wasn't just that I had this addiction, perhaps I just didn't have a life full enough. I didn't have anything to wake up for, but now I did. And so the desire, the thrill of it just didn't mean as much. And so I think I'm actually really glad I had that experience, because I never had this like false fantasy of what it was.
And your community changed.
Yeah. I mean, my whole life changed.
Thank you so much for that question. I know there was another one here, and you've already got the mic.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Roxie. Thank you very, very much. I'm currently a coach for working moms. I really want them to prioritize their well-being. And the question that tends to come is, I don't have time, I have kids, work, etc. So what kind of advice to make sure that working mom focus on their well-being, whether it's mentally or physically? Thank you.
Yes, please.
I think it's one of those things that I think when you're a working mom, there is this just such a deep sense of obligation. And I think that, we only have so much time in the day. And I think that we assume that if we are not giving it to our work or to our children, then we are letting somebody down. And I think that's what really allows us to then make excuses of, I don't have time. Because it's not that you're trying to be undisciplined, let's say. It's because you genuinely believe that not giving that little time you have left to your children, to them, is the wrong thing to do. But actually it's understanding that in making, and this is, you've heard it so many times, but it's so true, is in making that time for yourself, that you are able to show up so much, with greater compassion, with greater patience. I think your capacity for patience is so much greater when you have a good calmer nervous system, when you've done 5 minutes of meditation, when you've, taken time for a shower without people banging on your door if possible. So yeah, I think it's just understanding that it is enabling you to be the best that you can be, whether that's at work, with your friends, with your partner, with your children.
I think it becomes quite clear that society is not set up to prioritize our well-being.
Yeah.
And so when we do that for ourselves, that joy really is radical. I think we have time for one more question. Oh, there's so many. Now I have to choose. I feel a lot of pressure. This lady here, the mic is right by you, and I'm so sorry. Roxie, you'll be around, I'm sure, for a little bit.
Yeah. I'm going to go upstairs and have a little spy.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So you said, and I've heard it many times, that 95% of our beliefs, are in our subconscious. And, what's your go-to? So for me, I use breath work to try and shift into the subconscious and change all those limiting beliefs that are basically running the show.
Yeah.
What is your, you've mentioned a few things. What would you say is your ultimate, this will change how you believe?
One of the first things the first technique I ever used was falling asleep to affirmation meditations. So I would probably say that. It's just so easy. All you have to do is lie there and fall asleep. And at the time, I wanted to manifest meeting my partner, who I did, and so I'd fall asleep to that, it was like those real 80s voices. It's like, yeah, I am ready for my soulmate, But yeah, I still, that is a practice I still do now. I think it's, we know that our brain is most susceptible when we're in that meditative state, or when we're in that moment between consciousness and unconsciousness, when you're, waking up or when you're falling asleep. So I just use that, really, and so yeah.
Thank you so much for all of your questions.
Thank you.
Roxie, thank you so much.
So
it's been
much.
such a pleasure to talk to you today. There's a lot to take away, but I think this idea that showing ourselves love is a part of our well-being is at the crux of everything that we're doing here at Health. So
absolutely.